Okay, so we're on to solving equations, and the point of solving an equation is to determine the value of the variable. So you work your way to the point where you have a variable all by itself on one side of the equal sign and a constant on the other. So there is a series of steps that generally can be followed to make that happen. First thing you want to do is look to see if you can see any parentheses, because if there are, you probably have to do some distribution, and you want to do that first. Once you've distributed, if there is any distribution, you want to look at both sides of the equal sign. Look at the left side, see if there are any like terms to combine on the left, see if there are any like terms that can be combined on the right. You're not going across the equal sign, moving anything around, getting rid of anything yet. You're just trying to make each side of the equal sign as small as it can be. Then you start to add and subtract any constants that you have, because the way you're going to get rid of those is to do the opposite. And then finally, if your variable has a coefficient, a number that's kind of stuck right to it, so to speak, you eliminate those coefficients with multiplication or division. So, starting with the one step, there's no distribution, there's no opportunities to combine like terms. Remember, anything with a variable cannot be combined with just a plain number, a constant. So now I'm going to start looking at those constants. My object is to get this x to be all by itself. When I look at the equal sign, what is with the x is this positive 1. If I want x to be by itself, I have to get rid of that. So since right now I have a positive 1, I cancel it out by combining it with a negative 1. And the ultimate rule of equations is whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Equations have to stay in balance, and that's how that happens. So these canceled out. All you have left is an x. And then I'm going to pay real close attention to what kind of integers I have over here. I have a negative 12 and a negative 1. Same sign sum. So I add and keep the sign for negative 13. And you can always check equations, because the value that you get for the variable should work when you plug it back in. So if I plug in negative 13, I have a negative 13 and a positive 1, which is negative 12. This time my variable is on the right. So again, there's no distribution, no combining of like terms. But when I look at the two sides of my equation, if I'm trying to get this variable by itself, this is the constant that I have to deal with. This is the constant that I don't want to be there anymore. So if I want to get rid of that positive 12, I cancel it out with a negative 12. And then whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. This is gone. 27 minus 12, 7 minus 2 is 5, 2 minus 1 is 1, equals y. Again, that was a positive 27 and negative 12, different sign difference. And again, if I plug 15 in here, 15 plus 12 is 27. Still no distribution, no opportunities for combining like terms. There's also no constants, so I'm not going to be doing any adding or subtracting in these. But right here, if this is my variable, this number that is with it is called the coefficient, and I don't want that to be there anymore because I want x to be all by itself. This operation right here, two terms right next to each other with no sign in between, that's multiplication. So if I want to get rid of a coefficient that's being multiplied with the variable, I get rid of it with division. And whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. So that cancels out. I have x equals positive 21 divided by negative 7 is negative 3. And again, if I plug that back in, negative 7 times negative 3 is 21. Looking over here, no distribution, no combining like terms, no constants. This time, though, the coefficient is actually in the position of division. So if I want to get rid of this coefficient here, I have to get rid of it through multiplication. So I'm going to divide this, multiply this side by negative 2. If I multiply this side by negative 2, I have to multiply that side by negative 2. These cancel out. Negative 2 times negative 30 is 60, equals x. So again, all of these just had one step, and depending on what you had to do, these variables here had no coefficients, but there was a constant on the same side of the equal sign as the variable. That's why I was essentially adding or subtracting to move those constants. These had no constants, but the variables did have a coefficient, so I had to multiply or divide. Multi-step equations, again, more of the same thing, just more steps. So my object is still to get this x by itself. So right now, the side of the equal sign that has the variable also has a constant. So I'm going to get rid of this positive 4 by pairing it with a negative 4. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. Drop this whole term down. That's gone. I have a negative 16 and a negative 4, same sign sum, which is negative 20. Now I have to deal with this coefficient. Right now this is multiplication, so I clear my coefficient with division. And whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. That cancels out. Negative 20 divided by positive 5 is negative 4. And again, when I post the notes for you guys to look at, I'll go through all the checks so that you could see how those checks work out. Looking over here, no distribution, but there is an opportunity to combine like terms. I have a 20t and a negative 14t. It's very important that I consider the sign part of that number. So positive 20, negative 14, different sign difference. So I'm going to subtract. The difference between 20 and 14 is 6. And since 20, the bigger number, is positive, that means the 6 is positive. I'm just going to bring this term down, and remember this term is a negative 4 equals 14. Here's my variable. So on the same side of the equal sign with the variable, I have this constant. So to get rid of it, I'm going to combine it with a positive 4. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. This is gone. 6t equals 18. Again, this is multiplication, so to clear the coefficient, I use division. And I get t equals 3. Looking over here, I almost missed it because it kind of tucked in there. I do have distribution, so I'm going to do that first. I'm just going to recopy this term here. 8 times 3, both positive, is positive 24. Whenever you don't see a coefficient with a variable, the coefficient is really 1. If you want to write that in there, go ahead. Positive 8 times negative 1 is negative 8, and that gets the x. This is in a different order than we're probably comfortable looking at it or that we're used to looking at it, but the process never changes. My variable that I'm working toward is right here. So right now I'm only dealing with things that are on the same side of the equal sign as that variable. So the constant I want to get rid of on that side is a positive 24. So I'm going to subtract 24. That's gone. Negative 56, negative 24, same sign sum. So I'm going to add those. 6 plus 4 is 10, carry the 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I keep the sign. Negative 80 equals, very important, negative 8x. Many people will lose this negative sign when they go down a line. You have to be always careful to bring all of the signs with you. This is multiplication, so if I want to clear that coefficient, I divide. So I'm dividing by negative 8. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. Negative 80 divided by negative 8 is 10. So 10 equals x. Again, these just had multiple steps because you might have had distribution, you might have had to combine like terms. You generally had to get rid of a constant that was on the same side of the equal sign with the variable, and then you had to do some division to clear the coefficient as your last step. Variables on both sides, still, the general process is the same, but because you have variables on both sides, you can kind of start wherever you want sometimes. So if I look here, I could pretty much start anywhere I wanted to, and I would get the same answer at the end, as long as variables go one way and constants go the other. So to show what I mean, I'm still going to start by dealing with the constant. So right now I'm going to deal with this -3. I'm going to get rid of it by adding 3, and whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. So I'm just copying this term down. That's gone. Bringing this term down. +21, +3 is +24. And I guess this is how my mind thinks about it. I made my constant go over here, so my variable has to go over there. Again, the object is to have variable on one side, number on the other. So I'm going to move this whole entire term. This 8n right now is positive. Since I don't want it to be there anymore, I'm going to subtract the entire 8n. And whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. That canceled out. So now I have a +5n and a -8n. Works just the same way as integers. Different sign difference. The difference between 5 and 8 is 3, n. And then since 8, the bigger number, was negative, that is negative, equals, bringing down that +24. And then my last step is to clear the coefficient with division. So I'm dividing by -3. Remember, I'm not losing track of that sign. And then I get n equals +24 divided by -3 is -8. And then lastly, I have the most complex equation on the page. So I do have distribution, so I'm going to start there. All the distribution is happening on the right-hand side of the equal sign, so I'm just recopying all of this. I'm not going to deal with that yet. +2 times +8 is +16, and that gets the n. +2 times +21 is +42. Now I have the same situation that I had over here. I have a variable and a constant, a variable and a constant. So I could start anywhere, really, but I'm going to start with this constant over here again. So right now I have a -6. Important that negative sign belongs with the number. So I cancel it out by adding 6 to both sides. I'm recopying this whole 10n. That's gone. 16n. +42, +6 is +48. So my constant went this way, my variable has to come this way. My constant's on the right, so my variable is going to be on the left. I'm going to move this whole term right here. Right now 16n is positive, so I'm pairing it with a -16n so it'll cancel out. Then I have a +10 and a -16. Different sign difference. The difference is 6. And since the 16 was the bigger number and it was negative, that's going to be negative also. Equals 48. Remember, that was positive. And then lastly, divide away my coefficients. Divide by -6, divided by -6. So n equals -8 also. Okay, and again, you could check that always by plugging things in. And when I do the notes that are not narrated, I'll do the checks so that you could see. So again, better to work very, very systematically. One operation per line, one underneath the other, keeping everything in line, keeping everything straight, and really making sure you're keeping track of your positives and negatives. That's it.